Hi boys and girls, it's me Butch. My name is Terry David Silvercloud. I'm 73 years old. I live in Vancouver, British Columbia. I have chronic pain issues and try to keep busy and useful by making videos. I was a high-end photographer, studio photographer, fashion, cars, industrial, magazines, advertising, that kind of stuff. Never did weddings or sports. I don't know how to do them. But if you need a hamburger to look really good, I can make a burger look great. And I can make a beer look like you want it right now. Before I go on, when we were shooting beer, we used to use soap suds for the foam because it would sit there it would sit there for a while and you could see what it was going to do, and the drops of, I'm sure they still do this. There's a lot of new special effects available these days. I'm old school. We'd use glycerin for the drops of water. And the way you make a beer look really good is you have the camera over where you are, aiming this way, and then you carefully cut out a piece of gold-colored cardboard exactly the shape of the bottle and anchor it behind the bottle so there's a light coming down from behind, shining light through your beer, or any drink for that matter, but particularly for beer. So where was I? I have ADHD and I wander. I'm trying to be useful in my old age. I'm making videos, and today I want to talk about religion because I'm an atheist and I think religions are evil. So like Christopher Hitchens, as a good atheist, I try to do whatever I can to destroy the evils of religion. So before we begin, I don't have a script. We should establish a few words here, so I don't give a crap if you get mad at me. There we go. So, hubris. What is hubris? Hubris is self-righteous ignorance and arrogance. People that want to feel better about themselves, even though they don't know what they're talking about, will be quite self-righteous about it. So what is ignorant? If you're ignorant, what are you? Ignorance is a lack of knowledge. If you're ignorant, you're just not very well educated or lacking in experience. You aren't necessarily stupid, you might be, but you just don't know any better. It's like a little kid. Children are ignorant. All children are ignorant. They don't know what's going on. You have to teach them. As an adult, we would hope you weren't ignorant, but there's a lot of ignorant adults out there. So what about if you're stupid? Stupidity is an inability to use knowledge. Stupidity could be inherited, genetic, brain damage. You're just so dumb you'll never get it, no matter what you do. And there's some people that are well educated, but they're stupid. In my opinion, our ex-Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, was an example of a very well-educated but very stupid person. Just because you can memorize things, tons of facts, if you can't use them, they're useless. You're just a walking encyclopedia. You know lots of facts, but you have no way of using them if you aren't intelligent. I'm the smartest person I know, but that's my opinion. So where were we? So the question I asked, I guess, was, I have it over there, is religion a mental disease or a personality disorder? Well, I'm a physicist, not a doctor, psychiatrist, or psychologist. I have worked with disturbed juvenile delinquents. That was lots of fun. I enjoyed that. But in my opinion, it's not a disease, because diseases sometimes can be cured, and it's not a sickness. Religion is not a sickness, but it is definitely a mental disorder. The reason it's a mental disorder is religion is denial of reality. Any religion is a complete denial of everything you observe and see. Any well-educated, intelligent person would fairly quickly in their lives, certainly by the time they reach young adulthood by 18 to 25, somewhere in there. If they had any doubts about religion and they were asking serious questions, which they should be asking questions, then they would quite quickly begin to realize they've been brainwashed into either their parents or their community's superstitions. Everybody's afraid to die when they're young. Nobody wants to die. Me, I want to die. I hate this world. I'm suicidal half the time. The only reason I stay alive is I'm a little bit like Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche? I can never pronounce his name correctly. He's a very well-known author and philosopher, and he wrote the book Also Spake Zarathustra, or sometimes translated as Thus Spake Zarathustra, not to be confused with the musical work by the same name. They go together well. But Nietzsche, he struggled with the question of God, and he dismissed God when he was quite young as being ridiculous. And as best I understand his writings, he believed that the only real true path to true happiness had to be through suffering. You had to not worry about being a breeder and raising family, not worry about acquiring wealth, but to dedicate your life to some cause, any cause, but some cause in which you truly, truly believed in and thought that you might make some kind of difference to the world by engaging in it. And if that meant you had to suffer, then you would have to suffer. The Buddha, he lived around the 4th, 5th century, as did Socrates. Socrates ended up being ordered to kill himself or be killed by his fellow citizens in the so-called democracy of Athens, because he was preaching that the gods were non-existent and ridiculous. And he used to hang out outside the Agora, which was the marketplace in Athens, and you had to be 18 years old to enter the Agora. So there was sort of a tavern kind of something or other building, and we know for a fact that it was there because archaeologists have discovered proof of its existence. We knew of it in writing, but we didn't know of it in fact until archaeologists definitely, positively, without any shadow of any kind of doubt, found the ruins of where this building was. So a lot of the young men of Athens, the ones that weren't 18, under 18, used to hang out there outside the marketplace, as young men would do. That's what young guys do. And Socrates, he was, in his old age, he wasn't particularly cleanly, from what I gather. And he was annoying because he would ask people incessant questions. He would ask you a question, and then he would ask you a question about your answer, and he would just question you to death until you started thinking about what you said in the first place and realized maybe your first answer wasn't a very good answer. But he used to hang out with the young men, and he preached the idea that the gods were ridiculous and for corrupting the youth. That was the charges. The priests weren't too happy about it. Priests are never happy when you start knocking religion. Just look, see what happened to Jesus. So he was ordered by his fellow citizens. They held a court of 500 of jurists, and which would have been upsetting to Socrates because he believed you should be tried by a jury of your peers, and he considered most of the citizens to be idiots anyway, so they certainly weren't his peers. But of the 500 people that were there, 280 of them voted for him to die. So either they were going to do it for him, or he could kill himself. So he drank hemlock and killed himself. He wasn't going to. He could have just said, "Well, sorry, I was wrong, and sorry, I apologize. Forget everything I said," and they probably would have let him off. But like Nietzsche and a lot of great philosophers, including myself, we stick to our guns. We don't. I'm Butch. That's why I'm Butch. Let's get into that. Where was I? So religion is a mental disorder, which is a denial of reality. Religion is not only unreasonable and illogical, but downright evil. Anybody who really thought about it is, if you're a parent and you create a child, you're a creator. You don't have a right to rule that child forever. What would give you that right? I mean, seriously. And if you indoctrinate your child into your own superstitions and beliefs about afterlives of which you've not even taken the time to study. You've never studied your religious book. I guarantee any of you who are religious, I know more about your religious books than you do. I've read them. I've read the Quran and I've read several versions of the Bible. I don't always read the whole Bible of one Bible, but I'm always looking for ways to prove Bibles are wrong, and that's pretty easy. So have I covered that stuff? I've covered that stuff. So my main point of this is to get you to think about religion. If you have a religion, I consider it extraordinarily evil. And why do you have religion? If you have religion, you have a mental disorder. You may have been poorly educated and you didn't really much pay attention to your religion. You have no idea where your religious book came from, nor how it came to be. I guarantee you, 999, let's try a better one. Yeah, that might be good. 999 out of every 1,000 people haven't a clue where their religious book came from, what year it came from, how it was written. They know nothing about it. It's extraordinarily easy to prove the Book of Mormon is a fake. It's extraordinarily easy to prove that the Urantia book, which you might not have heard of, is a fake. The Church of Scientology is so over the top ridiculous that I won't even get into that. That's for the complete idiots, really. That's my opinion. If you're into that, you're totally brainwashed, and oops, the focus is having trouble. Let's put what's out of the way here. So it's trying to focus on something else. I don't know what it's focusing on. The camera has autofocus. Nietzsche thought that that there was no philosophy which would work for every single person. It was one of his basic precepts, as best I understand him, is that you can't create one individual philosophy that will work for everyone. And as best I understand it, he did not publish his last book because he came to realize that he was just coming up with a standard philosophy that would work for everyone, and that was against his basic principles. He felt that if you had to suffer to do what you had to do, that's the way it was going to be. And also spake, thus spoke Zarathustra. Zarathustra comes down off the mountain and basically, I gather, announces that God is dead, and proceeds to expound on which is basically Nietzsche's philosophy about life. Confucius, who lived around the time of Socrates, he basically tried to do what Nietzsche didn't want to do, which was that if you just laid down a whole set of rules, you'd be good. And he wasn't so much into God, but the Buddha would be, I think, horrified by what's going on these days. I learned recently, and I didn't know that modern depictions of the Buddhist are Greek. There were no known Buddhist lookalikes that you see today before Alexander the Great, back in the 3rd century or so, 3rd and 4th century BC, decided to conquer the world, and he got very far east and encountered everything. He wanted to know everything. His troops were getting pretty tired by then, but he was aware of the Buddha and imported those ideas back to Greece, and it was Greek sculptors who sculpted the first Buddha. That's what I heard. Maybe it's hearsay, but I'm going for it. I'm an artist. I know a lot about art. I know really a lot about art. So I'm up to 15 minutes nearly, and all I want to say is if you believe in a religion, you have not examined it, you will resort in your hubris and ignorance to saying you pull out your holy book, not knowing who wrote it, where it came from, or anything about it, and quote that, and that's just some writing that you have no idea where it came from. I do, trust me. It's just some ancient writings written by somebody who decided to write them down. In the case of the Latin Vulgate, it was the Roman Catholic Church who commissioned Jerome to do the translation. He brought us Lucifer, Satan, and the devil. There is no Lucifer, there is no Satan, there is no devil. All three are translation errors made by Jerome. There is no hell either. That was not a translation error. So the Roman Catholic Church brought us hell, Satan, Lucifer, and the devil, all of which are translation errors Jerome made in translating the Bible in the 4th century into English. There were no Bibles before the 4th century. There were the Jewish scripts, or the Hebrew scripts, Tanakh, and they got mostly translated as the Old Testament, and then the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century, when the church finally decided they were going to take over Rome, and wrote a Bible. They created what you will call the New Testament. They said, well, let's look at what's out there, and this will be the New Testament. And it was decided by a bunch of self-righteous a-holes who lived back in the 4th century. That's my opinion. I consider religion to be extremely evil. If you teach your children your superstitions, you're committing extraordinarily child abuse. And if you believe in a religion, you have a mental disorder. The good news is it can be cured. It can be cured by education and turning on your brain. So we're up to 16 minutes and 30 seconds, and I didn't really have a script, but I have a list of things I want to make videos about. I don't expect to be alive much longer, so I'm really getting my act together, trying to. I paint in my old age. I've learned that being an artist is, a painter is, you can't really make a living at it these days. Painting is out of style. You need some other job or to be a commercial, even illustration is kind of getting out of style. But if you can draw very well, there might be jobs for you in the electronic industries. But galleries are shutting down, and I've learned, because I've studied art, that most famous artists never made any money, and they're only famous because they're famous. Andy Warhol didn't need to make any money. He was an extremely successful illustrator in New York. He couldn't get a show to save his life, but eventually he managed to get some attention and got some fame, and that's why we know him. He never sold a single Campbell soup painting. They were all bought by an art dealer at a show who tried to show his friend in L.A., and nothing sold. But it got him some press, which really helped. And the art dealer agreed to, instead of spending all the money to ship them back to New York, and he said they could never be broken up, so the art dealer agreed to, there were 32 of them, he gave them $1,000 each, which he paid off over time. And the dealer eventually sold them to a museum for $15 million. But Andy Warhol was, he made really good money illustrating shoes for Condé Nast. That was before the days of photography and magazines, and then he started Interview magazine. Andy Warhol created the modern concert, with flashing lights and the whole bit. He was doing that at the factory, and they were called happenings. So Andy Warhol basically invented the modern multimedia kind of stage shows you see in concerts. Renoir became see, I'm not even talking about religion, but I'll tell you a bit about me so I know a few things. Renoir at age 14 was sent to apprentice at a porcelain factory, so he learned to paint very steadily in very tiny little brush strokes, and he was quite good at it. That's why his parents sent him off, because they could see he had talent. And he was so talented that he would get a cut of commissions for dishware, and rich families would have portraits and things painted on different dishes, and he did well enough that by age 19 he bought his parents a home, and then in his 20s he gave all that up and ran off to Paris, where art was really happening at the time after the French Revolution, and got involved with some friends, and they became known as the Impressionists. But now if you look at a Renoir, just think if you're just looking at a very large dinner plate. He was very good at doing that kind of stuff. So Butchie Poo is going to shut up. I'm a theoretical physicist. I have a very good theory about the speed of light, which you can find on this channel. I have it written out too, but If you look on the Butch News channel where this is, you'll see one of my videos about the cause of the speed of light, and very shortly, if I don't die first, I will do another one about my grand unified theory. I have a theory of how everything works, including gravity. It wasn't what I was looking for. I was studying religion, and because I'm a physicist, I noticed a few things that I found in religious symbols, like the first, second, and third temple. The first temple of the Hebrews was the Kaaba in Mecca. It was built by Abraham and Ishmael. It says so in the Quran. So the third temple was destroyed during the Jewish-Roman War in 68 to 70, when Tiberius sent 60,000 troops to Judea to kill every Hebrew that they could find, or in those days they were considered Jews because they lived in Judea, which was a Roman province. So Tiberius, between those 2 years, tried to kill every Jew he could find in Judea, and the last of them holed up the Mezorites on a mountain, and from them we got the Dead Sea Scrolls, so, which is why we know there was no Lucifer, because we have an Aramaic writing from the time of Jesus of Isaiah 14:12, which is the only verse where Lucifer appears, and there is no Lucifer in the Aramaic writing. So 21 minutes. I don't care if you're watching this, you must be interested, and I'm an artist 24/7. My whole life is art. I do whatever I can to denounce the evils of religion, and here I am. It's my opinion, it's my right, and I'm doing it because I don't have much longer to live. I know it because of my health problems, which I won't bore you with, except I live in constant pain. It's not fun. So bye-bye from Butch. I gotta do this. Bye-bye.